much all for coming. I'm 𝗥𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees of FETE, and I'm chair of the External Relations Committee of FETE. FETE, which is the Federation for Existential Therapy in Europe, just a few words about that before we start. FETE was founded in 2015 during the First World Congress for Existential Therapy, and is a registered charity as well as an accredited European-wide accrediting organization and a member of European Association for Psychotherapy. So we welcome you today to the first Existential Encounter. We are very happy that this series of events is starting this year, and is starting with Bo Blåvarg. We have also scheduled the next 4 monthly Existential Encounters, as we call them. The next one, as you saw in the email, is on 28th of February with 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 from 𝗥𝗲𝗂𝗃 on trauma and the healing process. And the one after that is in March with 𝗦𝗂𝗂𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 from 𝗦𝘂𝗂𝗃𝗀𝗃 Training Institute on experience of creating existential family and ancestral archives. FETE has also co-organized 4 European conferences over the last years. And as you have read in the email, this year's 5th conference on existential therapy is co-organized by FETE and the Existential Academy of Istanbul. So it's going to take place in Istanbul on the 24th and 25th of May. And the theme is Building Bridges. And this is a hybrid conference, both on-site and online. So you can still book a place if you want, or submit an abstract for a presentation. And please visit the website for more information about the conference. And also I would like to particularly to invite you to join us by becoming members of FETE. Either you are still in training or you are qualified existential practitioner. By becoming a member, you will join the wide group of existential therapists in Europe. And the aim of FETE is to join in a dialogue and unite the existential therapeutic voices of Europe and support and encourage European-wide training and education projects on existential therapy. So you can see more information about this as well on the website. Finally, a few things about Zoom. If anyone of you is not familiar, please remember to keep your microphone on mute. And if you want to speak, you can find the button, the raised hand button, at the reaction menu at the bottom of the Zoom window. The speaker or one of us will see it and ask you to ask a question. You can also use the chat box. Again, you will find it on the bottom. Please feel free to private message me because I am the Zoom host for any technical problems or anything else. And now I want to introduce you to FETE's chair, 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, to declare the beginning of this evening's event.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna, and a very warm welcome, everybody. I'm happy to see you here this evening. As Anna said, we are starting a series of online events organized by FETE, the Federation for Existential Therapy in Europe. I would like to thank the Social Media and External Relations Committee of FETE, chaired by 𝗥𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 from Greece, and includes members Monica, Alex, Peter, Anna, Claire, Jack. So thank you very much for your hard work. Many of the people I can see here this evening are members of FETE already, and as Anna said, I'm inviting those of you who are not members of FETE yet to join us. I'm happy to welcome to our first Existential Encounter session, Bo Blåvarg, existential psychologist, who will be talking about substance abuse and relations, an existential perspective. Bo, who lives in Sweden, is a licensed psychologist and authorized existential psychologist with a private practice in Stockholm. He is also an educator, lecturer, and supervisor in addiction and kinship, as well as in existential psychology and psychotherapy. For many years, Bo has been the operation manager for 𝗘𝘅𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, a clinic for relatives of people with addictive disorders, and for 𝗘𝘅𝗶𝘀𝗁, a clinic for adults who have been sexually abused while growing up. Bo was one of the founding members of FETE. He was actively engaged in preparing FETE's constitution back in 2017, and he was a board member in FETE's early days. So, Bo, the stage is yours, and thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Gideon, for your kind presentation and for inviting me to this encounters. I'm very glad to see you all, and it's very exciting to be talking to Europe, if you can say that. That's a nice feeling, I think, that we can be gathered all across Europe in this way, and that is what I find so enthusiastic about FETE as well, that we can meet across borders, across languages, and across cultures, so on. So I'm very glad to be here. And I'm also very glad to be able to talk about this topic, which I find very, very important. I will be talking for an hour or so, more like an hour, 10 minutes or something like that. And then we will have time in the end for questions. So please note your questions during the lecture, and we will have time to talk about the themes and the questions you may have afterwards. And the more we can make this a talk about this subject, the better, I think. So, all right. So you will soon see me disappear, and when I start this, when I start my presentation. But first, I would like to say that yes, there are three things that I will address tonight. The first one is the substance abuse and how it alters, you may say, the substance abuser's way of being in the world and relating. Secondly, how the other inhabitants in the relational world of the substance abuser is affected, that is, family members, and mainly I will talk about the children and the young adults from the family with a substance abuser. And third, how existential psychotherapy, counseling, and existential perspective is crucial in the care of both the substance abusers and the family members. So these are three areas that I will talk about tonight. All right, so I will start sharing my screen, and I will see you in a little more than an hour for discussion and questions and so on. All right, good to see you, and see you soon again. All right, so the starting point tonight is our relatedness. And the self, our self is always in flux, and the self is a result of our relations. So our self, as well as other and world awareness, is an outcome of rather than a starting point to relatedness. And this is important. And that is a quote from Ernesto Spinelli. And from Nishida, it is not that there is an experience because there is an individual, but there is an individual because there is an experience. So there is a relation first and then a self. And that's an important starting point in the existential perspective, the relatedness, which is one of our existential givens. So let's see if I can. And another two quotes to start with from Emmy and Digby. It's a given of our existence that we come into being in a social world. We are always in relation. We are born into relations and we die in a relational world. And to make sense and to understand ourselves, we can never do that on our own or in isolation, but always and only in and through our interrelational context. So, and that goes, of course, for substance abuse and addiction as well. We can never understand addiction if we do not take it from the relational context. That's the only way we, from an existential perspective, can understand the substance abuse and the addiction. So, what we do when we use a drug, alcohol, yeah, when I talk about drugs, I might say drugs in general, or I may say alcohol, drugs, and so on. But I mean substances. When I talk about substances, it's alcohol, prescription drugs, and illegal drugs. So these are the three main drugs within the substance abuse. So what happens when we bring a drug into our relational world? Because that is what we do when we engage with a drug. Our relations are affected immediately and always by drugs. You cannot take drugs without having the interrelational world affected. So our way of being in the world with other people are affected by drugs and alcohol, which we know from our everyday living. And the substance abuse is in the relational world, not just in the individual. And that is crucial. We have to look at substance abuse as a relational, from a relational aspect, not just as an individual problem, or what you could say. And our worldview is distorted by a drug or by alcohol. So the way we look at the world, the way we feel about the world is distorted by a drug. And of course, that is why we use drugs, isn't it? So it's nice it's nice to get away for a while, to feel more courageous, maybe, to get away from the monotony of our existence, or the conflicts, or the dilemmas, or the tensions that we live in, and just to dim the lights for a while. So that is why, and we all have our different reasons for using a drug. And they can be small, or they can be big, and they can be different. But we always use a drug or alcohol for some reason, and we make a choice when we use alcohol or a drug. And we are also taking a risk, because none of us knows from the start who among us who will develop a substance abuse and who will not. But we know that some of us will, maybe 1 out of 10. So we engage with a drug, choose to take a drug or drink alcohol for some reason. Well, it's nice, it tastes good, it's nice to dim the lights a bit, or whatever it could be. So, and one starting point as well is we take a mind-changing drug, and of course our mind is changed. It's changed immediately and for this evening or this weekend, but in a substance abuse, it is also changed in the long run. So one of the parts of our body, or of our mind, body, or what word we may use, that is most affected by a long-term substance abuse is what is called the prefrontal cortex of our brain. And that is also a part of our body that helps us to be existential creatures, if you want to use that word. It helps us to self-reflect. It helps us to reflect on our mortality. It helps us to be future-oriented. It helps us to relate. It helps us to relate to other people. You can, if you want to, you can call it our social brain, and a part of our social body. So what happens in the long run in a substance abuse is that this part of our body goes down in function or in intensity, which can be quite devastating. And when that part of our body goes down in function, goes into hyperfunction, there will be a lot of impairments that affects our social ability and our relation capacity, so to speak, and our way to be in the relational world. First of all, we got a memory impairment. It's hard for a substance abuse to remember what is said in conversations, what we agreed upon yesterday or a week ago, or where we are going the next weekend. As a child in a family with substance abuse would say, my mother never remembers. And that is true. A mother with a substance abuse have a hard time remember just because of a hyperfunction in this part of the body. The attention is impaired, as we all know. We are not allowed to drive cars or fly airplanes when we have a substance abuse, and hopefully we are not allowed to operate as a surgeon and other vital areas where the attention is needed. But the attention is always also needed in our relational world. We have to have an attention to see what other people are doing, where they are, where our children are, and so on. We have an impaired control of aggression, which we all know from violence in the streets or violence in the pubs and so on. It's families where there is a substance abuse, there is much more common with interpersonal violence than in other families. There is also an impaired mental flexibility, which is, it's harder for a substance abuser to change mental tracks, to start to discuss other things, to leave a mental track, and to change subject in a conversation and so on. There is also an impaired ability for self-reflection. It's hard to have a third eye that looks upon us and to change our way of actions, our way of speaking when someone says, I think you have to lower your voice a bit. And then we say, if we are not intoxicated, we say, oh, I'm sorry. Of course I will. When people with a substance abuse have a hard time to do that. And we have also an impaired judgment. We do not ask an intoxicated person if he is able to drive the car or not, because we know that his judgment is impaired. So we step in and say, oh no, you're too drunk. So I say, give me the keys, and you sleep it over and sleep it out, sleep it off, and maybe you can take the car tomorrow in the afternoon or so. And substance abuse also leads to an impaired judgment of what is happening in the family, how the family members react and what they feel and what they, how their emotional life is. So, and this is very important. We also get an impaired social cognition. And by social cognition, we mean, among other things, to look at another person in the face, to look at another person's face and understand what that person feels, or what kind of emotions is going through the face or the body of another person. And when we have a substance abuse, we have a hard time reading other people's faces and to deduct what they feel and what they might, and how they might act. And that is also common for what you call basic emotions like happiness, sadness, joy, despair, and so we have a hard time in a substance abuse to read other people's faces, and we also tend to misinterpret other people's facial expressions, so that we tend to interpret a sad face as hostile. Which is also why many substance abusers may react to sadness in the family members as if it was a critique or an aggressive action. So we have also difficulties in what is called prosody, the melody and the tonal up and downs of the voice. We have difficulties with empathy, which is in part due to the impaired mental flexibility. We have problems with theory of mind, to have an idea of what is going on in another person's mind and predict what that person is going and how that person probably would act. So. And all of this is what you can see through. You can see the reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex. You can test all these abilities for memory, attention, planning, and so on, and facial expression. So, but this is also something we know from our daily life, isn't it? So. We do know by heart that drugs and alcohol impairs the nuances in our relationships. So, and that is why we would never accept a drunk psychotherapist, would we? No, I don't think so. Because we know that the nuances in the communication will be lost. Maybe he won't remember what we have said. Maybe he won't be able to keep his attention and so on. And this is exactly, and we would never accept a drunk babysitter because we know that the attention and the awareness of where our children are is impaired. So, and this is, of course, what also happens in the interrelational world of the substance abusers, in the world of the family members and the substance abusers. So this is many of the ways the drugs and the alcohol alters the way the substance abuser is in the world with others. So, and the substance abuser is also what you can describe to as being captured in a constant now. In a constant now of getting the drug, being high or drunk, being abstinent, getting the drug, being high, being abstinent, or getting the drug, in a kind of bubble, which is a constant now. They have difficulties of being future-oriented. They get an altered perception of time, and other people's time and change is hard to appreciate. You could say that in a substance abuse, you can be stuck existentially in time, and you could, not uncommon, when a father or a mother returns from a substance abuse, they have a hard time to appreciate what the children and what the partners have been going through and how long the time has actually been. And in the beginning of sobriety, it's not uncommon that they give the children presents to the same age as when they went into the substance abuse. So the parent can give a 15-year-old daughter's presents to an 8-year-old daughter. It's hard to, in the beginning in sobriety, to appreciate what has happened to other people during this now that we have been living in. And that is also why family members also feel there is no future in this relationship. We are not going anywhere. We are stuck here. There is no hope of moving forward, no hope of planning for the future. So you might, as a family member, also be stuck in time together with the substance abuser. So a drug abuse, a substance abuse brings with it several cognitive impairments that severely affects our ability in the interrelational world, in being in the world with others. But it's important to remember that we don't stop loving our children and partners or close ones, even if a substance abuse deprives us from the ability to care for them, to be future-oriented together with them. And hopefully, family members can be clear of this distinction, and the sooner the better. As one 9-year-old kid said at the clinic after joining one of the groups, he said, "I know now that my father loves me, but he cannot take care of me, so I cannot live with him." So, and that is a good starting point for him, to be able to separate the love from the ability from his father. You could say that for the substance abuser, the existential window slowly closes when we move into a substance abuse. We may lose our ability to care, to see the face of the other, to speak with Levinas, to self-reflect, to be future-oriented, to understand the needs and the emotional life of our loved ones. That existential and relational window slowly closes, and we may slide slowly into that substance abuse now. And of course, several existential themes can be affected. And this is an open discussion, of course, but this is some that may be affected by the substance abuse. Freedom and responsibility, how do we think about those themes when we talk about substance abuse? Choice at the beginning, but also in the substance abuse. Self-reflection is hard. What kind of meaning do we have in the substance abuse? The face of the other, as we have been speaking of, is also an existential theme that is affected. Can we see the other? Can we be in relation with another person in the same way as we was before? And the ability to care. And, of course, our free will to execute our free will. Is that possible when they within a substance abuse? And is it possible to live authentically with a substance abuse? So there are many existential themes that can be affected by being in a substance abuse, besides the relatedness and the interrelational world. So this is what the worldview of substance abuse, what it may look like. The world, as we have seen, is narrowed down. It's like a tunnel vision. You are stuck in time. Other people are often seen as hostile. Aggression and loss of control of aggression impulses. And we have the drug as the most important relation and maybe the most valued meaning of our existence. We cannot see the face of our loved ones properly. We have a loss of autonomy. We maybe cannot even care for our economy, for our health, for our daily living, and so on. And maybe you can call it inauthentic in that respect, that emotions and values are distorted by the drug or by the alcohol. So the substance abuse or the alcohol abuse, the drug abuse alters the worldview when we enter into the abuse. And it's a very sad and very devastating condition for the substance abuser. And it's if we do not get help, it's also a very serious condition. It might in many cases lead to death and to an early death. So, and besides, it's also very common. So, and this is why this is so important. This is one of the most common and most devastating conditions that we have in our societies today. So, and hopefully though, we can return to life and relations. And this is a task we must be humble about. This is not an easy journey for a person who have had a substance abuse. The relations to our loved ones are damaged for a long time and maybe never able to repair. Will my children ever accept me again? And will we have a good relation ever again? The loss of meaning when we do not have our drug anymore, so we have to search for a new meaning in life, and that might take some time to find one. And these cognitive impairments remains up to a year in sobriety. They do repair, but it takes more time than we think. So that is also why the family members and the substance abusers are in different timetables. The substance abuser who is longing for relations with the loved ones might say, please start now. And the family member says, no, you're not ready. You're not there yet. I'm sorry. And so they are different. So you have to be in the midst of all this, very patient in your sobriety. And you're meeting the same existential issues as before. Maybe the same existential issues you wanted to escape from when you first started to engage with a drug. And there is no special reward for you when you come back from substance abuse. You're just at the same place as everyone else. You have to face the same tensions, dilemmas, conflicts, monotony, happiness, joy, love, disappointments as everyone else. And you have to engage in the world again, open up to the face of other people and endure the pain the loved ones had suffered during these years, which is not an easy task as well. The guilt and the shame, you have to meet also that in the sobriety. And because this is a different task, it's also a task that not all people manage, or so not all people return from a substance abuse, unfortunately. So for the time being, we leave the substance abuser and the substance abuser's worldview and meet the other inhabitants in the relational world, the family members. So, and this is also a quote from Ernesto Spinelli, which brings us back to the start. Relation is, and self follows. So relation is, and then our self-construct follows. So what is happening in a family with this, when there is a substance abusing parent or an addicted parent, that is, as a child, we come into being in relation to a drunk parent. And we come into being in a relational world without a future. We come into being believing that our needs are harmful to others. Remember, when I'm sad and when I want to be close, it might be experienced as aggression or critique. We come into being in invisibility. My dad and my mother doesn't see me. And also important, we come into being in a violent relational world. So this relational world is, and our self follows. And we also come into being within the dynamics in a family with substance abuse, the fluctuation between sobriety and intoxication, you know, this wave-like movement within the family. So, which is, when we talked about this in a group of young adults, there was one young woman who said, "Aha," she said, "is that why my people call me a spotlight?" So sometimes I'm very close and I'm there and I'm attentive and I'm listening, and then suddenly I draw myself back again. And then I'm there again in the relations, and then I draw myself back again. And they say, "What's happening? You're here, you're not here. You're here, you're not here." So, well, and she said, "This is what I bring with me into my adult life. This fluctuation between hope and despair, between, oh, now it's a good time, and now I have to prepare for a bad time." So we can bring that dynamic with us into our adult relationships. With the dynamics also is a lack of focus on your own feelings and experiences. And as we said, aggression when trying to get close emotionally. And we do not talk about the obvious. Dad is not drunk, Dad is tired. Dad has a bad boss, or Dad has whatever it can be. Just don't say that it is addiction or it's too much alcohol. So the families are also socially isolated, physically and emotionally neglected. And this is not to remember the physical dimension of substance abuse, the odors, the bodily fluids, the excrements, the bodily deformation, decomposition, delirium, psychosis, dementia, etc. Even if you have, even if you have worked for many years with family members of addicted parents, you can still be surprised by the what could you say, horror or any other word. I met with one young man who had 3 of their apartments were burned down. They had to move 3 times because the apartments were burned down in the substance abuse, and so it's hard to remember the horror. So that therefore it's also important to remember the physical dimension of a substance abuse, which is not very nice. So when the relation is and the self follows, if we are unlucky, we get sedimented beliefs or self-construct from those relations that can sound like this. If you have grown up in a family with an addicted parent, "I am sad, but I don't know why. I am like a mystery to myself. I am never angry. I'm not attractive. I don't leave an impression on other people. I can never be a parent. I don't know how to have relations." These can be sedimented beliefs and a self-construct we bring with us from an upbringing with substance abusing parents. So what had the children been through? And that unfortunately, kind of a bleak picture. They have been taking care of home, parents, siblings, washing, cleaning up, waking the parents, getting the parents to bed, taking the siblings to kindergarten, and then by themselves going to school and falling asleep during the lessons. Lived in an ongoing crisis with fear of losing one or both of their parents. And sadly, There is also psychological and physical violence. And these numbers are from a Danish study from a clinic for young adults from alcoholic homes, help-seeking young adults. And in this group of help-seeking young adults, 63% had experienced systematic humiliation and degradation more than once a week, averaging 9.7 years of childhood. Every week being told you are ugly, no one can love you, you will never get anyone, you will never get a relation, you better shut up because you're so stupid, and so on and so on. For in average 9.7 years of childhood. There's a lot of physical violence. 44% of the young adults had experienced physical violence at least once a week, averaging 7.9 years of childhood. So that's a rough childhood as well, and also an increased risk for sexual abuse. So it can really be a hard time being in the relational world of a substance abuse. Which is also why, this is a Swedish study, you need more medication as a child when you live in a family with substance abuse, when you live in an interrelational world with substance abuse. So this is Swedish numbers. You are almost 3 times more likely to have a medication for anxiety. You're twice as common to have a medication for depression. You're twice as common to have a medication for insomnia, which is, and all of this makes sense, doesn't it? And they're also being bullied at school 3 times more often than other children. So if you want to put it harshly, you can say that the children are medicated for the substance abuse in their family. So, and as we said about earlier, when we about to have this fluctuation into adulthood, we also people who had grown up in a substance abuse family also are a high risk for mental illnesses as adults. This is from a Swedish cohort study, but these numbers can be found in other international studies as well. You have 3 times higher risk for mental illnesses as an adult, 4 times higher risk for suicide attempts as adults, and 6 to 7 times higher risk for substance abuse. Now, this is kind of serious situation, isn't it? So, and this is why it's so important to see substance abuse not as something within just the substance abuser, but this is an interrelational condition. The substance abuse is in the relational world and affects the inhabitants of the interrelational world in very devastating ways. So that is why it's so important to lift out the substance abuse from the individual to the interrelational world. So, and see substance abuse as an interrelational condition and not just as an individual condition. And that is the only thing I think that we in the long run, we can treat substance abuse, to see it as an existential interrelational condition. So there are many challenges, of course, to start a life of your own when you have grown up in a family with substance abuse, when you are part of that interrelational world. So you have to move away from home and leaving your parent, who maybe will not survive without your care. You have to be able to go to a party on Saturday night, knowing that your mother is asleep in the hall in your apartment, and maybe she needs help to get to bed. You may have to imagine yourself of being able to have a love relationship, and becoming a parent yourself. You have to deal with the grief from the childhood, which can be a very large grief when you come into adulthood and discover that other people's childhood have been absolutely different than mine. That there was never any knee for me to sit in. There was no one who ever tucked me to bed. No one ever read me a story. And I will never get that chance again because my childhood is now over. And that could be a large grief. You have to avoid your own substance abuse. You have to be coping with your own mental health difficulties eventually, maybe, and coping with physical and psychological trauma, if there is any. So, yes, and setting boundaries when you have lived in the substance abuse interrelational world is difficult, and that is part of the difficulty in relationships. And it stems from the feeling of not being worth anything as a human being. And it's hard to put up external boundaries, emotional, physical, ethical, or material. But also, and importantly, in inner limits of managing my time. When do I need to eat? When do I need to sleep? How can I take care of myself? I really don't know. So this can lead to exhaustion for people who are part of the substance abuse world. And this is one young woman who said, do you know what the most feared question I can think of is? And I said, no. What do you want? Because she didn't know. It could be easy questions like, what movie do we want to see? What do you want to eat for dinner? And what do you want to do for vacation? And how do you... So she expressed it as a shame of not being able to express what I want, what I desire, what I feel. And she also had an idealized image, which she shared with many people, an ideal image of normality that other people do not find it easy, do not find it difficult to make decisions, to have relationships, and so on. It's just me who have this difficulty. And of course, there is an existential dilemma. Shall I let my parents, my siblings down, or shall I let myself down? So this is kind of a harsh picture of substance abuse or the relational world within a substance abuse in family. So, but in contrary to the substance abuser who has sometimes a severe affection on the brain and have a hard time to maybe never recover from the substance abuse. The family members the hope is much bigger to be able to have a good life as adults, to be able to mourn, to relate, to reflect, to be future oriented, to laugh, and so on. And you can be surprised sometimes when we like, for a group of family members from substance abusers, what an extreme change they can be over a period of time, over a term or a week, autumn or a spring or something. Just to be able to find which is important for us counselors, therapists, or what we call ourselves, to provide an existential and emotional space for these family members without the need to reach any predetermined goal. Just a place where I can start to exploring who I am and who I want to live my life, where I want to, what decisions I want to make, what actions I want to do, and maybe for the first time in my life, put myself in the center. To come out of the shadow of someone else and someone else's need. And that is why also the existential perspective is so crucial, that we can keep the exploring perspective, the descriptive perspective. We do not have to rush into any solution or any goal. We can take it everyone at their own pace, in their own process. We're not going anywhere specifically, but providing this existential space finally for this person to start to explore and put myself in the center of my own life. You know, and it's also very important for family members from this relatedness to not be given diagnosis. It's from there are many strengths, of course, from the existential perspective, and this is one of them, that we do not see people's distress, sorrow, anxiety, or what it may be as a sign of pathology, but as a result of how they are living their lives and how their worldview and their worlding in this interrelational context is. Because many people who seek help come with diagnosis of depression, ADHD, or general anxiety disorders, or multiple diagnoses with medications, and have never been asked, how is your life? How are your relationship? What kind of experiences do you have with you? So it's very important, as you all know, that the suffering the effects of growing up without parents is not an illness, but it's still a great sadness and a pain. And to give these people a diagnosis is to confirm their sense of inadequacy and their feelings, and that their feelings and desires are pathological. I am not. I am one of those who are not able to. I can never. I am broken. And whatever it might be. Just a moment. Yes. Just let me have a look. So, Yeah. And one other important aspect of the existential perspective is the emphasizing of the therapeutic encounter as a human encounter, not specifically between a specialist and a patient, a healthy one and an unhealthy person, but it's also a human encounter with different roles, but we are in this encounter also two human beings who will, as we said before, relation is self follows. Even in this relation, our self will change and be something else also from a therapist or counselor perspective. We will also change in this human encounter. And this, for this particular, from the family members, is very crucial because in the existential perspective, it's also okay, and sometimes in this perspective, maybe more than okay, to be touched by this human encounter. It could also be a huge therapeutic effect for the client. I can mean something. I can leave an impression on other people. And even in this educated psychotherapist, I can leave an impression. I can mean something to this person. So that can be to be able to disclose in this therapist-client relationship that I, as a psychologist or a psychotherapist, have learned something as well, that this encounter has changed me as well. And I'm very glad for this encounter. So that is an important therapeutic effect. A withdrawn, I mean, a more psychodynamically, psychoanalytically educated therapist, a silent therapist, can heighten the client's sense of pathology, that they have caused this bizarre encounter with a person who doesn't say anything, and they will actually place the blame on themselves. And of course, we have the imported group. And be in a group is, to borrow the word of 𝗤𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, is to become a part of humanity. So, and this could be one of the main therapeutic effects of the group, to immediately experience that you are in the world with other people, and that you are in the world with other people who also who also suffer and struggle with difficulties. The group, to use an existential language, provides a direct understanding of the ontological of our givens, of what we all human beings have to relate to and have to deal with during our lives. And working in a group also breaks an emotional isolation. I can talk to others about important topics, and I am understandable to many people. I, who have considered myself as strange, hard to understand because I don't understand myself, and so on. And it's just not one confidant, not just one therapist, but many people. And that is one of the strengths with groups. And one of the hazards maybe with a dyad, with a one-to-one therapeutic encounter, that if you finally meet one person that you feel understands you and that you feel seen by, you will never let that person go. But in a group, you get instantly the experience that I am understandable to many people. not just one. I can reach out my hand and there will be someone there who I can talk to, who will understand me, and who I will be able to share my joy and my pain with. And the quote last down here is from one attendance in a group for adult survivors from a substance abuse family. I will never forget your story. I will take it with me when I'm alone and think there is no way forward. So from a group, you can also take the other person's stories from their lives into a sort of to hold hands when it gets dark in your own life. And other people's stories in the group can also make your own life real. What you maybe have thought to be, it cannot be this bad. It cannot, has this really happened? Has this really occurred? No, I'm too sensitive. And so on. So, but no, this has really happened. So that is, working in a group can be absolutely important, and maybe not so ego boosting, if you can say that, as a psychologist or a psychotherapist. Maybe the most thing you do is cooking coffee for the coffee break or so. No, that's a exaggeration. But the group has a dynamic and provides that is very important, and that is besides what I and a psychologist can provide. So there was one elderly lady who was in the group who pronounced this not pronounced, but who talked about this feeling of becoming a part of humanity in a very nice way. She said, "Now that I have met all you in this group during this time, I know that I'm not alone anymore." So, and this is a kind of forgiveness. It's not just me who fights with these dilemmas. And she expressed it like this as well. Nowadays, when I go into a restaurant or McDonald's, I do not feel alone anymore. I know that all these people in here, they struggle with the same dilemmas as I do. Maybe not now and maybe not in the same way, but sometimes in their life, they will also face the harshness of separateness, death, meaninglessness, relatedness, and so on. Maybe not now, but we share this. So she said, I do not feel alone anymore in that sense. And that, I think, is a nice way of describing what a group can give to the people who have been who have came into being in a substance abuse relational context. So, and for many, the difficulties we bring with us into our adult lives manifest themselves as a life crisis. The way we had to deal with relationships and the needs and expectations of others in our earlier relational context is not working in our adult life. We are, so to speak, without a map and not really sure of how to relate to other people. And many are approaching or have reached exhaustion when they seek help. So this is, we are soon to be finished here. So, but this is a, I don't find a word, but this is what I think we all must do as psychotherapists, or whatever word you might need, in what context we meet other people. We should need to grow rabbit ears. When a client mentions substance abuse, when a child mentions substance abuse in school, when a client mentions substance abuse in psychotherapy, in any other circumstances, pay attention. A whole life of sorrow, pain, and lack of relations may be present. The client, him, herself, may have hard to believe that earlier experiences or the relational context that still exist can have that sort of impact on our life, on our sedimented worldview. And they often seek so, as we said, seek psychotherapy and counseling in a life crisis. And this last quote here on this side is from a woman of 36 or something, with a daddy who had a 20 to 25 years of alcohol abuse. And she said, I think about it all the time. At work, when I'm free, it's like a big chunk of concrete on my shoulders. I can never relax. She was thinking about him all the time, how she could help him, if he was going to die, what would be the next day, and so on. Always. And she was on sick leave for exhaustion. So, finally, the relational world of substance abuse, one conclusion to all of us, you might say, since the substance abuse is not in the substance abuser, but in the substance abusers, in the relational world of the substance abuse, we will all, as therapists, doctors, counselors, or whatever, work with the relational aspects of the substance abuse. Even if we do not work with the addiction or with the substance abusers themselves, we will always work, we will most certainly work with the relational aspects of the substance abuse with many of our clients and patients, because they are many. Maybe we can add that at the end as well. The Swedish cohort study, and as many other studies, have shown that among between 15% up to 20% of the children in Sweden and in other countries as well have come to being in a relational, in a substance abuse family. So, and that, of course, which is in Sweden about 350,000 children, or aged 0 to 17 years. But that also means that in the ages between 18 to 36, there are almost 400,000 young adults who have come out of this interrelational context. And of course, 400,000 people in the next 18 years from 36 to 54. So there's a lot of adult people who have experienced the interrelational world of substance abuse who will seek counseling or therapy or help in their grown-up life. And just as an illustration, one of my colleagues is working in a clinic for intensive short-term dynamics psychotherapy, ISTDP, you know. So, and they were astonished over when they had during the coffee break or collegial supervision, I don't know, but all of the clients at the clinic did come from the interrelational context of substance abuse. Every one of all the clients in the clinic. So that is what it may look like if we grow rabbit ears and work with the relational aspects of substance abuse and the relational world of substance abuse. Right. So, thank you. And now we can have time for some discussion, maybe, and some questions, if you have any. Are you still awake?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, Bo, for this wonderful presentation. I was left with several thoughts, and if I'll share only some of them, then, you started saying that relation first and then comes the self. And I think what we've learned from you is that it's relationship that can harm us, but also relationship that can heal us. And that is very important for us to remember. Thinking about existential themes, I was thinking about Jean-Paul Sartre talking about collective responsibility. And I think this is something also that came up very clearly. And also about Martin Heidegger, that reminds us that we're having to face reality, when you said that eventually if you use drugs or so, you cannot escape reality. And sometimes the reality you're waking up to is worse than the one you wanted to escape. Yeah, so these are
definitely
some of my thoughts here. So, questions, thoughts? I think Agneta want to say something, yeah? You're muted.
Oh, thank you. You don't know how lucky and happy I am to be here tonight. And the best thing is that to be with you and Bo Blåvarg is one of my favorites. And like 25 years ago, he helped me and my daughter. So thank you, Bo, for everything you're telling us here. It's so fantastic, the work you do. And you are talking in such a nice mood, so it really falls in my head, everything you say. And also what I think is so good that you talk about tonight is that, because I also work now, I help not the drinking people, but the people who lives with the grown-ups who live with the drinking people. And 70% of the people who are, they're sick leave, they don't work, and because they are exhausted. But it's not that they are exhausted, it's because they have been living with an alcoholic. And I'm so happy, Bo, that you are telling us so we get more power. And I'm so filled up with good feelings. So, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Oh, Bo, can I say one more thing? Then I will. It's about, you said about the children and how important it is that you lift the children and see that they get help as quick as the dependent and codependent gets help. And that's what you do at 𝗥𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, and that was amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
I've sent so many children and codependent to you, and everybody are coming back like me, happy, because, oh, at last, at least somebody sees me and understand.
Thank you.
You are a queen or a king, maybe I can say.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Sabine want to ask something?
Yeah, there are 3 hands.
Yeah, Sabine, then Annie, and then Elhanan.
Hello.
Hello.
My question is, how are you defining substance abuse? Because obviously there's substance use and substance misuse. How are you differentiating? What are your thoughts on what are your thoughts on things like cannabis legalization?
Oh, that's a hard one. But when we call substance abuse, that is something we all can do. I think we can share a bottle of red wine, or we can, if we prefer another drug, we can use cannabis and then go on with our lives. But when you are in a substance abuse or misuse, you have a hard time not using the drug. So, and it affects your social life, your relational life in very severe ways. And then you are not in the use anymore. You are in a substance abuse. So, I mean, for an example, if there is an after work and I am supposed to pick up my children at kindergarten, and they say, please come, we take some beers after work. And I say, no, not tonight. I'm picking my children up, but maybe some other time. If I'm in a substance abuse, I say, yes, let's have some beer, and I forget about my kid. So there is a difference in the severity it affects our social life, I should say. Yeah.
And I suppose, any thoughts about kind of the movement of psychedelic therapies?
No, not really. I think when it comes to the psychedelic therapies, I think they will fall in line with medication. So I think they will be prescribed like other psychoactive drugs. So just they may stem from a mushroom, but they will still be prescribed like a drug, like a chemically produced drug or a mushroom produced drug. They will still be prescribed by doctors, I think. So.
And you're saying it has a negative impact on someone's being in the world?
It could absolutely have, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Annie?
Yes, hi. First of all, thank you for letting me be here. It was such an interesting lecture. I enjoyed it a lot. I have a question related to the substance abusers specifically. You had such an interesting point of view about the children or people who grew up in the household with the substance abuser, I mean. But I'm curious, from the existential point of view, what is the concern issue with the substance abuser himself, herself? I was curious to ask you if you work also specifically with the people who are dealing with this issue, and what are the existential approaches with them?
Yeah, we do work with the parents who are returning from the substance abuse and hope to start a family life again, returning as parents, so on. And what we help them to do is to endure the dilemmas and the tensions, to be patient, to not use the drug again, but to be able to feel the pain, the suffering, and still not taking the drug, to to be able to meet the harshness of life, the dark side of life, without going back to the drug. And that is a kind of an existential dilemma, maybe for all of us in some way, but it's very hard for the drug abuser to not take the drug when our existence is harsh or dark or so. And also to stay with the choice they once have made and the values that underlied that choice. As one father said to me, he had been sober for 2 years, and he had a work, and he had he was going to separate from the children's mother and with a divorce, and there was a lot of conflicts, and he had a long alcoholic dependence. And he said, is life going to be this? Is this what life is like? Then I don't know if it's worth it. Then I don't know if it's worth to stay sober. And that is one of the existential questions all people returning from a substance abuse must answer. Is it worth to stay sober? And that is a question, value-based question, that you can work with existentially. And that is also a very important, both the endurance of the existential harshness, but also the values and the choices to stay with them, is why an existential perspective is very crucial also for the substance abusers and in the returning to life and to relations again. Was that an answer? Or?
Sure. So as I understood, the meaninglessness of life or meaningfulness, finding the meaning is the main concern.
Yes.
If we can sum up with
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Annie. And last question from Elhanan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bo. And thank you very much, first of all organizers. I mean, I just got a link, an email, and I just realized now there's so much more behind that event. Very appreciated. It was very, very informative and helpful. Interestingly, that it hit me, this event, just this week, because I, for the first time, had a client that I had to refer to a rehab center because of a relapse. So he was an addict, was sober, and was sent back. And I felt like when I had to refer, that existential therapy failed. That I tried with meaning, I tried it with everything, and then I with my supervisor and everything, I was advised, pass him on to the center. He needs a group. He needs everything. And it's interesting that you just demonstrated that the group and the group support, this is existential therapy in other way as well. So for myself, as an answer, no, existential therapy did not fail over here. But the question is for myself, in private therapy, giving meaning to the challenge, the urge, could there be work when the person is within his addiction and driven towards the urge?
I'm not sure I understood, but do you mean, could it be, is an existential practice meaningful when there's still an addiction? Is that? No?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you have to decide that from each unique person too. And I think you can feel that the unique person's ability to relate. You can feel that in your encounter, if it's meaningful or not, I think.
Right. And my question is, with an addict is not be able to feel, to think, and all that list you had at the beginning of your slideshow, that it's not able to go into that thinking.
No, and that's why I think the existential perspective is more helpful when the person has had a few months of sobriety, something. That's when the person's existential issues are more at stake or at heart, or you can say, when you can start to open up to the world again, take in, as we said, the pain from others, and so then that is the period when the existential therapy is most helpful, I think. So, does that make sense? So,
yeah, that definitely makes sense. What happens to me in that case?
Yeah.
And this the last question about the beginning of this lecture, you were talking about this impairment and these like, were you talking about a active drunk or high person, or was that the person in general, even if it's not doing
yes, even when you have had a long substance abuse or addiction or so, these impairments endure into even in sober periods and so on. The brain does repair itself, but it takes time. So up to 9 months, a year, and so, and before the brain has recovered, so which is very hopeful, it says. And there was as an example, there was an interview with one of the members of ABBA, you know, the music group. So one of the male members, 𝗏𝗏𝗂𝗀𝗏𝗂𝗀𝗏, who was also a songwriter, so he had a long alcohol abuse for several years. And when he got sober and got help or treatment, he said, after about 9 months into my sobriety, I could start work again, creatively, with music and so on. And that was his period for his brain to restore itself, and he could begin to be in the world again, creatively with other people. So 9 months, a year or so. But of course, the repairment, or I don't know the word, it's step by step, of course. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, both, for this wonderful presentation. It is always good listening to you. Thank you, Anna, for organizing it, and thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. I'm looking forward to seeing you next month in our next Existential Encounter with 𝗦𝘂𝗂𝗀𝗂𝗀𝗂 from Greece. Thank you, and good night, everyone.